Hello, everyone. I'm Professor Ozan Örmeci. Welcome to our show. We continue to host expert scholars in our podcast series. Today, we have one of our regular guests, regular speakers, Professor Herbert Reginbogin from the Catholic University of America. Professor Reginbogin has expertise in several issues, primarily being the international law. So today, we are going to discuss with him the legality of the recent US actions and the future world order, the future of world order. So, Herbert, welcome back to our show. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's our pleasure and privilege. Thank you so much, Herbert. And Professor, since we have not spoken for a while, uh, President Trump engaged in many new activities, policies, and these were creating both sensation and also drawing widespread criticism, such as the capturing of the Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his wife, then maybe threatening Denmark for taking over Greenland, a large island close to United States. So, as a well-known American professor on international law, could you please analyze to us what is the mindset of President Trump and his team, and whether they act in this manner as a retaliation to Russia's ongoing war in Ukraine, since the power politics has come back to the town? Thank you.
Thank you very much. As to the motives of President Trump's motives are very singular. It's what he wants. And everybody has a problem realizing that this is an emperor without any guidelines. And you're treating him with tributes as if you were back in ancient times by giving tributes. So you even can regard that as part of the Ottoman Empire. You give tributes to the Sultan so that he doesn't harm you. And again, if that's the norm where might makes right, then we are in a new world order. And this is exactly what President Trump wants. If you don't want a change of a world order, which was created by America and its allies 80 years ago after World War II,
Yes.
then you have to step up to the plate. As far as Article 2, Section 4, the use of force against a sovereign country, it's to be condemned. It's not a question of my opinion. It is the international law of the UN Charter.
Yes.
And that's what it is. In terms of US law enforcement, you can talk about extraterritorial jurisdiction, where again, he can be arrested through some kind of clandestine operations. But that's questionable when you have 15,000 US troops on a aircraft carrier,
Yes.
which is a threat. And it's not about US territorial law enforcement, it's about invasion and potential use of force. But again, he did use not only force, but he invaded a sovereign country. And as far as boats that are a threat to national security, when you have a boat in which men are in the water and you order a second strike, that's even a criminal in terms of the crime against humanity, if you want to use that as an argument or an alleged crime. Again, this is all not being pursued transparently, and the American government, American papers, American Congress, and the world is not yelling and saying we need the evidence. And until we get it, we condemn. Not only condemn, we take action. But again, you're talking about a superpower. And again, you're talking about an empire. And now we have American imperialism. Where are we going? Back into the 19th century? Where again, the norms and the laws of Adolf Hitler, of Mussolini, of Franco, Salazar, of the 1930s, is that where we are? Are we heading for World War III? That was the story of the 1930s that led up to the 40s. So these are questions. And the answer to your question is Yeah, Trump loves himself.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor. I got your answer very carefully and in a well manner. So, uh, as a close follower of American politics and even a friend of earlier US presidents, do you think, Herbert, President Trump could forcefully take Greenland from Denmark, a NATO ally, by forcing US soldiers to engage in a military conflict with other NATO troops from European countries? Because recently, including France, many European countries sent soldiers to Greenland. You explained us very, briefly how President Trump thinks. So he's considering himself as a sultan. Understand he can do whatever he can with his might. But could this turn into the, collapse of NATO and a real skirmish between US soldiers and European soldiers? Do you think we have such danger?
Yes, we have such danger. But let me qualify again that even what we would call a leader that works around the principles of the UN Charter does provide some benefit to the world order. So again, if he can bring the war between Gaza and Israel to an end, it's an advantage. If he begins to bomb Tehran and they stop executing protesters, there's an advantage. If he again wishes to uphold human rights and use extraterritorial jurisdiction for dictators, please, but be consistent. And again, if you really want to have a destruction of NATO, you're on the best way of doing it.
Mhm.
Again, this is all about his understanding of ruling, not about sharing the idea of ruling something. It is the interest of America, America first, which is his own perception of himself, because he is an American. And therefore, all of this is a personification of an ego that is out of control. That
Mhm.
might seem harsh, but leaders have that in general. Power really makes individuals sometimes perverted in the sense of understanding what are the contexts of their limitations. And President Trump is pushing those limits, not
Mhm.
only in foreign policy, but domestically.
But Herbert, the United States is a very well developed country with all these qualified universities, best universities in the world, and President Trump has a large team of experts. His cabinet, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. Do you think they don't warn him about the possible consequences of such policies violating the international law and norms? I mean.
Look, I'll give you an example. Marco Rubio, with the governor of Florida, when he ran for or attempting to run against President Trump and others for
Senator,
the
yes.
candidacy of the President of the United States.
Mhm.
At that time, Rubio condemned Donald Trump. Now, because of power, he's a friend. And you advise someone, you only advise it in your own interest of remaining in power. Because potentially, in 3 years, Marco Rubio might be a presidential candidate. So again, it's politics at its finest. And in terms of international law, who cares? If really international law was something of interest to this administration, it would observe the very principles of the UN Charter. And it doesn't. It is back in the 19th century where the tools of war is legal. The ICC is no longer respected or even recognized, is sanctioned by the administration. You have no respect for the United Nations, its dysfunctional Security Council. One of its members is again at war in Ukraine. Our international courts are not effective in terms of controlling genocide, because the Genocide Convention opened up in Article 9, allowing reservations of the parties in the conflict of a genocide, that says that the International Court of Justice has jurisdiction when all the parties to the conflict agree to allow this jurisdiction, which means that if one country doesn't want it, there's no process of ruling of a court.
Yes.
And this is, again, a watering down of the Convention of Genocide. So again, we're in a very, very poor situation where the question really remains, will the international criminal law have any effectiveness? Is international law powerless? Are we at the end of these 80 years plus, and are we going back into a new world order where might changes what is considered right?
Thank you, Herbert. Okay, so you give us a bit dark picture. So no one respects the international law. United States, the founder of the system, Russian Federation, another second, maybe strongest military power. But we have European Union, China, France, England, United Kingdom, and many other countries who care about the international law. So what we should do about to protect the UN system and the international law to prevent the escalation of crisis, maybe even the eruption of the World War III? What do you think, sir?
End the wars, the conflicts that are raging in Ukraine. And if that means using force, that means using military assets. You have to bring the parties to the table. And that's something that President Trump has been postponing to provide the necessary weapons to draw attention by President Putin to stop the war from his end. My calculations are that the public opinion in America will take hold of what is occurring domestically. And as it occurs domestically, where, again, ISIS and migrants or potential migrants, illegal migrants, are being arrested in the course where innocent Americans are being killed, justifiably or not. But the idea and the images of this happening in America is unspeakably not only dangerous, but tremendously emotional. So that the presidential outlook for the Republican Party is dramatically threatened. And the only way that President Trump can endure to avoid such a drama is, one, he invokes the Insurrection Act and then has martial law in November of 2026, where all the cities are in uproar. That's one scenario. The other scenario is that Congress begins to take a reality check. And in 3 months, or even in 10 weeks, we have the first primaries. And there are Republicans who want to be reelected. So again, they may start changing their tone, as they did by passing the bill on health care last week. 17 Republicans sided with the Democrats. But again, the Senate, again, rejected the bill, did not ratify it. So we have a development in this country, not only politically, but economically. Affordability is out of control. And again, all these ideas of attacking the Fed as an independent agency could cause an economic crisis worldwide. And again, you're dealing with volatile issues where someone in this White House has only the understanding of using power and you can't use power when there is nitroglycerin in the room. It explodes. It's a physical reality. So again, just to recap what we've been talking about, one, NATO needs to step up the plate, which it does, but not only symbolically, it means really militarily. And if that seems as a challenge to America, well, now we have a discussion. But everybody believes they have to go to President Trump and give him something in gold. So like a tribute to an empire or to an emperor. Now stand up, have the courage and the alliances that you need. And you may find it necessary to have partnership with people you don't really want. But again, it's in everybody's interest to stand and agree on the same principles. And the UN Charter embodies that. Now comes the question of enforcement. And that's where we have to look at. How do we now end these conflicts and find an enforcement where we don't routinely have states violate the very codex of international law? And for that, you need better representation in the Security Council. So not 5 countries who have veto power, you need more. You need to expand that. That
UN reform.
There you are.
I got it. Thank you. Thank you, Robert. You briefly touched upon the approaching US midterm elections this year, November. So thank God we have still democracy in the United States. So ballots will come and people will vote freely. So in the picture we have drawn for us shows that both economically and politically, US under Trump administration is not going in the right direction. So there'll be probably voters turning against Trump administration. And what could be the results of, looking from this moment, the midterm elections? Democratic Party recently at the New York mayoral election created a new political star, Mr. Zohran Mamdani. He became quite famous in the Muslim world, in Turkey and around the world. So could there be new political stars coming out of Democratic Party?
Well, let's go back to the first issue about the election process. And Republicans have attempted to pass bills on the state level to redistrict areas so Republicans have a majority in the election process come November 2026. At the same time, Governor Newsom has introduced the same. And California being one of the most populated states, or if the most populated states, this has a major impact when other states may be doing the same. So in other words, while 5 or 6 or 7 states may be doing this, if California has done it, it's been also recognized by the US Supreme Court, they're already countering what the Republicans have done in those respective states. So again, the mechanisms are changing. So the landscape has equity, or not equity, at least it appears to be a more fair playing ground. As far as the issues in America, the most potential disturbing issue is the rise of anti-Semitism. And this is something that people don't really grasp from the outside. If you have Tucker Carlson, which is a very well-known person in the media, invite Holocaust deniers who are racists, and they are not criticized by the vice president, Vance, and say, well, this is a big umbrella, and we have different opinions, and we sort of not take note of what's in our backyard. So again, also on the supposed left, the Democratic side, you have a new mayor who is anti-Semitic.
Really, you think so?
Look, his his understanding of what happened on October 7th, 2023, by not condemning forcibly the actions of the government of Gaza, the Hamas, and saying this is irrefutable a massacre. It's unjustifiable.
Sure.
If you take steps to say attacks on people, not in terms of only vocal, but in terms of other physical destruction, then you need to be asking the question of what the role of the mayor is. The point is, the mayor has an ambivalent presentation where he stands on these issues, and that's for political reasons.
Yes, maybe it's about politics.
And again, he may appear as a sheep in wolf's clothing. But then it's new. We will give him an opportunity. We should not preclude that he may have an attitude of balance where he may personally have certain feelings, but as an officer of the government, duly elected, he has responsibilities for all the people.
Sure.
So again, these are issues that I would then say that the mayor has an opportunity. He has a platform. It's unique, and it could be successful. And now he has an opportunity to perform. But I'd say beware. Beware of how this anti-Semitism is growing in ways that are so perverted that the arguments we use to exclude them are being used to allow them into our home. So, for example, if I say the denial of Holocaust is irrefutably anti-Semitic, and then someone comes around and says, well, this is freedom of speech. Well, now we have the context of our freedoms. You know, I have the freedom to go out and hit a policeman? No. That's my freedom, could say. Or I have the freedom to say fire, 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 which is an anecdote in the theater, where then people run out and they're scared and people are trampled and killed. The context of my freedoms is a privilege. And those privileges have to be well upheld in the context of how they're used. So there are limitations. Yes, I can speak as I do as an individual. I can demonstrate as an individual. But when it comes to actions that involve others, or where those others are saying, come on in, now we have limitations. At least we should be recognizing who these people are and what they stand for. And they are a threat. Just like Adolf Hitler was a threat in 1933 when he came to power, because other parties in Germany believed they controlled him. They couldn't. And again, you can draw analogies with all these different leaders.
Got it. Thank you, Herbert. So maybe I can take your opinion about the protests in Iran also in the last 2 weeks. It seems much more calmer these days, but until recently there were huge protests in Iran against the inflation, economic conditions. Iranian people showed their pure stance for democracy and freedoms. And President Trump also made some statements that to encourage Iranian people to protest the regime. But it also seems like the regime is quite strong and it won't be collapse because of these protests. So how we should approach from the democratic and international law perspective to a country where you have millions of people protesting the government, but of course, foreign intervention would be kind of imperialism. So, what is the magic formula to maybe to approach such matters?
Well, let us differentiate that international law applies to foreign relations. And if we are going to talk about international criminal law, or we're going to talk about international humanitarian law or customary law. We're going to talk about different types of laws under this concept of international law. As it applies to a sovereign country, well, they can allow or not allow protests. And the question is the measure of force that is used against its own citizens. If that force leads to extermination or to the execution of protesters, President Trump has made a very clear statement. You do this and we are coming as a country. And the leaders of Tehran took that serious because some months ago, the United States really attacked Tehran and killed some of its leaders. So this is an unharnessing of force, which is surprising to nations who live in the concept where everything should be ruled by law. The world is lawless. And if you really want to have effective laws, you have to have effective enforcement. Since we don't have the enforcement capacity at the international organizations level, it's up to the states. And the states are silent, at least when it comes to this issue of protest in Iran. Because to my knowledge, nobody supported
EU,
President Trump.
EU countries supported the protesters, not President Trump necessarily, but of course, EU officials encouraged the protests.
Right, but I'm not talking about the protests. I'm talking about the use of force.
Okay.
And that's where we are talking about domestically and internationally. And domestically, the use of force in Tehran is unlimited, unreserved. It killed its own people, thousands who were protesting. And President Trump made it very clear, I'm going to use force, and guess what? Mine is going to be more not only determined, but destroying than you can even imagine. And you've had examples. So again, we're back to that lawlessness of the international community. And since wars are raging in the Middle East, in Yemen, when you have problems between the UAE and Saudi Arabia, and you're not really talking about it publicly, when you look at the issues that are rising in other countries of the Middle East, Syria, Iraq, you can go on, Lebanon, besides Gaza and Israel. It's a total chaotic situation. And only through an idea of having certain benchmarks, like the Abraham Accord, or where you have certain conventions where you agree on working together on principles. And that's the whole point. The principles are no longer there. So our might has unmade what we considered right. Power corrupts unless we can channel that power to a constructive end, where again, humanity plays an important role.
Okay, Herbert. Maybe one last question, Herbert. People are curious about President Trump's, decisions. So we don't know what he will do, how he will react. So should we expect, do you think, any further move towards Cuba, Greenland, Iran? I mean, what are your observations, feelings about the current administration's, policies in the coming weeks?
I think right now the administration is on control, damage control. Example, it has allowed Mexico to export oil to Cuba. It has allowed U.S. forces to enter Mexico. This would have never been a situation some years ago, because Mexico would have said, this is a nationalist, we're a sovereign country. But there are now economic issues, and Trump is very powerful, and he's a threat. And so as the United States has gone out and done things beyond the normalcy of the standards of law and enforcement, it now wants to draw a line. And at the same time, it's taken a position which doesn't really let them to go back without losing face. So that's the case of Greenland. And the case of South America is that every of those countries are very much opposed to the gringo and Western imperialism or American colonialism, etc., whatever the ideology is. It's all the same. And the populist movements in those countries, as elsewhere, uses those ideas for their own sake to gain power. So the United States needs to develop a very clear understanding of what its strategy is about, but not only in terms of its America First, in terms of how the American First can play a role to achieve the norms that we have developed since the end of World War II. I mean, that's the whole point, the norms. So if people are religious, which many are, and if they're not religious, whatever you believe in, you're still believing in something. And most people believe in something that is good. So if whatever it is, the intent is good. And when you look at all the horrors and all the killings and all the other horrific elements of today in wars or domestic violence or control of our domestic situations, is this really the kind of picture that we can accept? Or is it so ugly that we are frightened? And most people in this country are frightened. And so really this comes out to the point where elections give them an opportunity to break out of their looking in the sand. It's time. Elections do have that purpose of being a catalytic factor in change, if they can occur fairly. And that's another question.
Okay. It's a bit pessimistic, isn't it?
Well,
Thank you.
I'd say cautiously pessimistic, but a grain of optimism, because I still believe that not only Americans, but Europeans, people of Turkey, people of the world, and their leaders will recognize the limitations. And if they really want to endure, not only themselves in the moment they live in, but also their legacy, they'll take note and try to cooperate with others, domestically and internationally.
Yes. Maybe we should also trust in the moral codes of President Trump because he behaves in that manner. He told so. So let's hope UN system and international law will prevail, Herbert, and we'll have more peaceful days in the coming weeks. And we'll continue to talk about Turkish-American relations and US foreign policy as well as US domestic politics. Thank you, Herbert. It's always been a pleasure to talk with you. So keep in touch. Thank you.
Thank you again. Have a nice day. Thank you again. Bye-bye.